Greetings, all. Welcome back to this edition of the Coptimizer podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Flanley. Today's guest, we're going to take a little turn. We're going to do a little something different today. And this show is about cop optimization. And at the root of cop optimization is the cop himself. One of the challenges that we're seeing around the country is a significant difficulty in recruiting new police officers. And it's not a new problem, but today's guest is an old friend of mine and somebody that I tapped his talents a while back, and now it's all coming full circle. Welcome to the show, Jason Doty.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate the invite. This is different for me. I'm normally behind the camera, so not. So this might be challenging, me sitting down for an interview, but I'll give it my best.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I thought this would be kind of a cool show to do because the sponsor for our show, Performance Protocol, really is a company. It's about performance optimization, about coaching officers. And one of the common themes from around the country that we see is police departments are having a hard time recruiting. And while it seems like a new phenomenon, it's really not. And you and I go back a long way. We have kids that grew up together. We coach baseball together. And one of the things that I didn't even know about you for a long time was that you were a famous filmmaker.
I wouldn't say famous. So a little bit about my background. So, I mean, I grew up in the area, the Lafayette, West Lafayette area, but I went off to film school after college, and I had a little bit of success there and won some awards and led to some things. But I came back here. Now I work at a university. I manage a video department, but I do stuff on the side. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a really cool opportunity to because a lot of the stuff that I do now currently with my job is, it's academic kind of motivated, and doing a recruiting video for a police department was an exciting proposition because I get to shoot some action scenes and do something a little different and challenging. But so that goes back. I think 2013 is when we decided to do when you hired me to do the first police recruiting video for the LPD.
Yeah. And so where did you go to film school?
I went to Florida State, down in Tallahassee. So, and
well, you're going to have to listen to an upcoming episode that I have coming on with retired detective Donna Brown. She's retired. She's a retired homicide investigator from Tallahassee PD. So I'm gonna have to connect you guys. She has some. She's written 3 books, and she's got some pretty amazing stories about police officers, and a lot right from that area. But
yeah, Tallahassee's, it's a really interesting town because not only is it the state capital of Florida, but it has 2 big universities, Florida State and FAMU, Florida A&M. And it's a really kind of interesting city. And it's not a typical Florida town. I would say it's more South Georgia because you're really right there in the panhandle, just 20 miles from the Georgia border. So yeah, but I really like the town, and it was a very I had another son there, so one of my sons was born in Tallahassee. So, but no, I had a good time there. Tallahassee was a nice place.
So you were being a little humble a minute ago. Tell me, what was the award that you won when you were in film school?
So there was a competition between all the major film schools in the country at the time called the Coca-Cola Refreshing Filmmakers Award. And so competition between like USC, NYU, Florida State, all across the nation. And you wrote a script, you pitched an idea, they picked 10, they gave you the money to make the actual spot, which was, the theme was the power of the movies. And then I won that year. And so what happened was, my short film got played in like 10,000 theaters across the country in the summer of 2000. And it was on Entertainment Tonight, and there's a big awards ceremony in Las Vegas. It used to be called what was it called? It's now called CinemaCon. They still have it every year in the spring in Vegas for the theater owners, where I met a bunch of celebrities, and it was really fun. But got a little bit of notoriety there, and got some opportunity, but it all led back to West Lafayette, Indiana.
Hey, life, you're still young, man. You got plenty of
Yeah.
time. And looking for the people that are on YouTube, I'm looking in the background and I see Anderson.
Oh
That's
yeah,
that's
that's
the
the
poster in the background, and that's your
yeah.
movie.
That's the thesis film that I did there, and that did pretty well too. As far as festivals, was in a bunch of festivals, and then the one next to it is the Coke thing, Escape Back to the Movies, and there's some other projects, short films, screenplay things that I've done. And so primarily what I've been doing, I also do a screenwriter, so I've had some success in that as well. I've had a screenplay that was optioned at Focus Features, and now it's currently in development with another group, an independent production group. The filmmaker that did I don't know if you ever saw the film Old Henry, but it was a Timothy Blake Nelson movie. He's now trying to put it together, something I wrote. So things are, different things are happening. And so I've always had a desire to do this. I started in high school. My high school had a radio TV program so at 14, 15, I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I just kind of pursued it ever since. So um,
Well, that's awesome. And I'm thankful for that because we got to tap into those talents, like I mentioned earlier. And one of the things, you're a script writer, a screenwriter, filmmaker. So it's 2013. Where even back then we had already seen. It was my first year as chief. We have seen a significant drop off in the number of applications that are coming into the police department. It wasn't nearly as drastic as it is today, but even back then we started to see this trend. So I just kind of was looking around, and I remember being a young impressionable kid in high school. I watched one of these Marine recruiting videos, and next thing I know, I'm down at the MEP station on my way into the military. I did not wind up being a Marine. Um,
that's all right. Air Force is fine.
that's a whole nother story. Uh, but in any case, I wind up in the Air Force. But there was a video that I watched when I was in the recruiter's office that was really cool too. And anyone that's been in the Air Force, the security police, they've seen these videos of the security forces where they're driving in these armored vehicles and they're doing these
Yeah.
nuclear convoys, and they show all the cool stuff. You know, all that testosterone in the 18, 19-year-old kids, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do that. And
Yeah.
so, all right, I'm like, maybe we should try something like that. Maybe we should do something that would show our community and show potential recruits what it is that policing offers. And so we're coaching a
Yeah.
baseball, and I'm like, hey, I got an idea.
And I think it's a really smart thing that you said about the military, because the military has heavily invested in marketing. Every year they spend millions and millions. I mean, some of the best commercials on TV are for the military as far as recruiting. They spend a premium to try and recruit, because it's always difficult to get people to sign up to volunteer for the armed services. It's not an easy sell. And I think what you're seeing now is, like, obviously with police, law enforcement agencies are seeing the same kind of difficulty as far as getting, recruits in. And so now you have to invest in that marketing. It's a new thing, right? That's been happening the last 10, 15 years, more so now, because it's even getting tougher. So yeah, when you contacted me, I think we had that initial meeting, and I had an idea at that time. So that video was interesting because I'd never done one, and I took more of a narrative approach, because what we did in that one, I really liked the structure of that one, how that one came out. It'd be nice if we could show it, but I think we're trying to track it down. Maybe you could show a clip. And but the thing that we enjoyed was, like, we wanted to be informative, right? This is what our agency is, this is what we offer, this is what we do. But at the same time, we built in a little story, right? And we
Yes.
incorporated a story of a police officer and a detective kind of doing an investigation, and you're trying to so you would see them in different scenes, talking to people, interviewing people, and then you find out at the end that they're really doing a background check on these new recruits that are applying for a job with the force. So I thought that it came out. I mean, the thing is about these videos, and I think is you could take a lot of different approaches. And I think that's one thing that you have to decide early on. What are you trying to do? I mean, what tone are you trying to set? Um, and so I think that's the first thing you really have to, okay, there's a lot of different ways you can approach it, right? I mean, ultimately, it's a sales job. I mean, this you could do kind of, and we can show examples. We'll probably watch some examples. There's ones that have a slight comedic tone. I remember there was one we watched back in 2013 that had some humor, and which we enjoyed. But the thing about humor with these videos, it's high risk, high reward, right?
Absolutely.
Because not everybody has the same sense of humor. So if you're
As we
gonna,
just noticed, we before we went live here, we watched. There's a little controversy down in New Orleans with a recruiting video that they did. They got some pushback from local community, and so we were kind of talking about that. We were able to avoid some of those pitfalls, but
yes,
high risk, high reward. I like it. Swing for the
yeah.
fences every now and then.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing is when you factor doing anything creative, right? Anything creative is going to have some risk into it, especially if you're trying to do something a little interesting out of the box. You're trying to attract eyeballs. You need to do something that's going to stand out from the pack. So yeah, so when you're so that's the probably the first thing is like, okay, what kind of tone, what kind of approach, what are we going to do? Because obviously there's information you want to get across, right? About your agency, who we are, what we do, the type of opportunities, those type of things. But then how do you package it into a compelling video that's going to make that person's like, oh, I think I want to figure out more about that law enforcement agency because in a video, that's another thing you have to think about is like, you don't want to do something really long. I mean, you just want to get the person interested into taking the next step. So you don't want to bog it down with a lot of information because a big law enforcement agency does multitude of things, right? And you can't show everything that you do. So you have to pick and choose what are we going to highlight? What are the things that you think are going to sell this to a prospective recruit, right? What are the most interesting things? What are something that's going to excite that 18 to 22 or 18 to 24 or even like laterals, which is something I did in my last video. There was quite a few laterals that had come to that agency. So you're still also looking at people in other agencies. Maybe they'll want to move over to our agency. So you want to make sure that you have your audience, but you don't want to limit yourself and like, okay, we just want 18 or 20 to 24-year-olds. You just want to, maybe broaden that out a little bit.
It's the cannibalization that's occurring right now because that's when you're talking about recruiting, one of the things, and we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, but it's not good for the long-term health of policing. The good short-term benefit to police officers is that it offers police officers are in great demand right now, so it gives you a little bit of leverage when it comes to negotiating for benefits and pay and salary, and then trying to get the country to invest in policing rather than defunding. And that was something I was going to cover later, but we might as well just hit on it right now because defunding creates so many challenges for a police department. One is you can't tell your story. You have a hard time finding the right people to be able to say, hey, look, this is our police department. This is what we're trying to do. And quite frankly, your story gets told on the evening news in 30-second sound bites or in a newspaper article. And that doesn't always tell the story.
No, I mean, I think if you have the ability, and I know some probably larger agencies have like a public fair, like a marketing person, someone who's out there. At the time I did the last video for your group in 2019, you had like an intern, which was very helpful. And we could talk more about that as far as like just the nuts and bolts of producing the video. You need someone on the inside that's going to help facilitate whoever you hire to produce your video, because you can't just say to the video producer filmmaker, hey, we want a video, and then just like do whatever. You're going to need a lot of coordination, to actually shoot the thing, because there's quite a bit that goes into it, because it takes a lot of planning and effort to try and pull something off where you're trying to like you want to show the broad range of things that you do. So a lot of stuff you're going to set up, right? Because you're not going to hire somebody and like, hey, just hang around for like 2 days. That's just going to be too expensive. You want to be able to coordinate and set up things and shoot, a crime scene, or shoot, a traffic stop, or shoot a chase scene or something like that in the alleyway. All right.
All right.
What are we seeing here?
So I looked on Police One magazine as I was trying to find some of the examples. And before I hit play on this, people that are watching on YouTube, they'll be able to see this. For those that are listening, you'll at least be able to hear the audio. And my intent today isn't necessarily to show a lot of these videos, and we're not going to critique these things. Well, at least not too much. I think the idea really is when we first started talking about this, and I asked you to kind of take a look at it, I had my ideas in my head, and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And you're like, all right, let me start doing some research. And you hit me up after you started doing some research, and you're like, man, what were some of your first impressions watching police recruiting videos? As you look on the screen here, and what do you see, right?
Well, they run the gamut. I mean, you've got to be really careful what kind of message you're trying to send. Because you have to understand is not only will this video, when you make it public, is going out to recruits, but community members are going to see it, right?
Right.
So you don't want to, I mean, you've got to be really careful in your approach and what you're trying to show. And obviously anytime you're doing anything that involves communication, especially with like a law enforcement agency, you really have to keep that in mind. Okay, not only is this going, if we're going to put this on YouTube, it's going out to everybody, right? And I think we saw that with the New Orleans thing, right? They got significant pushback, especially now in the age of social media, where it's like instant reaction. So you have to be careful with that. But I think when I was watching the videos, the one thing that I saw was like, some were just incredibly cool. And I was like, that wouldn't cost a lot of money. I mean, it's basically, and some were like, oh, that they hire their kid to, I mean, they really run the gamut. And a lot of it comes down to budget and how much money you have to spend. So, I mean, the bigger cities, agencies obviously have a little bit more money and maybe can invest into a higher level of production. But I remember the one you showed me. I think the one that stood out for me was the one from New Zealand. I don't know if this is it, but there was one from New Zealand.
This is one that I. Pretty intense, right?
Yeah, it's like a movie. You're watching a scene from a movie. Yeah.
I can hear the lost crying.
This is definitely like this is very well done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now I know why it was in the top 10. So we're telling a story here. We got looks like a potential active shooter. Got a car chase. Great music. Got the canine out, so we're highlighting the drone unit, we're highlighting canine, we're highlighting the technology. SWAT team's been deployed. Here comes the tactical unit. Showing some of their technology there. They've got crisis negotiation unit. They've got a hostage negotiator there. Their tactical team. This is nicely done. You know, it's really giving a comprehensive approach to a response to a critical incident. don't know if I've ever heard this song. I'm gonna have to download this on my iTunes. This is gonna be a good workout song for me.
Might be, yeah.
All right, we'll stop
So
it right there.
what agency is it? So this is very cool, and this is obviously an interesting approach where you're just kind of doing kind of a short film. It's not a hard sell at all. It's just showing what happens. The only criticism I have, because again, it's a great thing, is like,
That is the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Office.
Where's that at?
I don't know. Didn't say.
Yeah, but the only thing is like, if I'm a recruit and I'm watching a bunch of different videos, that one very cool. But is it selling Guadalupe County? I mean, the thing is,
it's in New Mexico.
That specific agency. I mean, it's a very soft sell, right? It's kind of like, these are the cool things we do, but you're just watching kind of a short film, which is I'm sure that's been effective. You know, I think that they did a pretty good job with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So a sheriff's department in New Mexico.
And then, you know, obviously wasn't cheap, whatever that was well done, highly professional. I mean, the thing is like, when you do these videos, right, the real thing is like, do they work? Are you getting people watching? Are you getting people interested? I mean, and ultimately that's what you want to happen.
Right. The metrics are important. And that's a great point, because a lot of times you have to begin with the end in mind, right? We need to make sure that we're accomplishing our goal, and that's to drive in recruits. And that's my next point, in that you started watching a lot of videos back then, and they were it was like watching action-oriented movies. It was like watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, a lot of explosions, a lot of gunfire, a lot of SWAT teams, a lot of a very militaristic appearance. And we're back in 2013, right? This is pre-Ferguson. This is not Radley Balco's book, Rise of the Warrior Cop. He's a New York Times author that wrote that book. I don't even think that had been published yet, so it was probably close to that. So there was, maybe we're kind of getting at some of the problems in our own public relations efforts in policing, is that we're pushing an image that is we're sending some mixed messages to our communities. So what was your impression as a community member and as a filmmaker and as a citizen when you're seeing, okay, these are the stories that are being told? What's the conflict here?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I think when I went into it and started shooting it and watching things, I thought, I mean, there's a fine line, right? I mean, it could come off as overly aggressive. And the same thing that excites a recruit about being a police officer, the action-oriented things, which I think are awesome and you should highlight, but you have to be careful again on what you're showing, and how you're demonstrating that. And there's always, I mean, like I said, there's always going to be pushback, but it was really interesting as just someone being a community member. And I have to say, I'm a pretty liberally minded person. And to me, it was really, really cool to get that insider's perspective of law enforcement agency being a community member, because I had no idea, right? I had literally no idea. I mean, most community members just have kind of this superficial, knowledge of your local agency. Like, you don't want to get pulled over for speeding, and you think, but once I got to know, obviously this goes back further because I got to know you and other officers through other times. But the thing that really was interesting to me, and what was like, what a really cool group of people worked at this agency with a lot of diverse, interests and background. And so my approach when I go into the videos that I've done is I like to highlight the individual officers and let them talk about, why they work at this law enforcement agency. Because I think that's typically the most powerful, is like testimonials for people that actually work there. You still want all the cool shots and the action scenes and stuff, but like having them tell the story and just why they're there is really typically, to me, is typically the most powerful way of delivering a message to a recruit. But I think, yeah, I think what really opened my eyes, and I think if you just, I mean, it's with everything. I mean, people, if you don't know people or you don't know that group, you tend to have some kind of idea in your head of what they're about and who they are. And unless you actually spend the time around these people and get an understanding of what motivates them, what they're trying to do, you really don't have that knowledge. And so I think it was really helpful just to me as a community member, just to get on the inside and to see like everything that a law enforcement agency does, what Lafayette Police Department and West Lafayette Police Department does. So
Yeah.
I think if every community member could have that experience, I think it would dramatically change the public's perception of police. Because you guys, I mean, you're there to serve the public. It is not a job. I mean, it's not a job that is easy. Of course, we don't want to give the recruit a bad when you're doing these videos. You don't want to come off as like, this job is so hard. But it is difficult, and it's, and it's fraught with a lot of, obstacles. And not only you're dealing with people typically on their worst day, and people that aren't giving you, you're dealing with people that aren't at their best, and you're trying to take control of the situation. And
yeah, here's another really here's a great example of a high quality production. You can tell that this is done in a way that most agencies probably are not going to be able to do this. And this is one that LAPD did to thank the service and commitment to veterans and an effort to recruit veterans. So this is kind of the other side of the coin, having a military style recruitment video versus trying to attract military veterans. All right, look at this.
I had to pay to use that song.
I know.
This is not cheap. That's Santa Monica. Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect example. Right, one of the things you can sell is geography, the town, the city. I mean, this is a huge selling point to recruits. Where do I want to live? And Los Angeles has a lot of appeal, and you want to show off the city. This is what you do, right?
Right. Now we got some action shots starting to get mixed in, some community service shots, and then we're going to hit all the different aspects of the PD. And this is where the storytelling comes in, right? It's not just about arresting bad guys. That's part of our mission, but 80% of police work is service oriented. So I think they do a nice job in this video of blending all of those things.
I mean, you can't go wrong with that song either. I mean,
no, jeez.
So if you got the cash.
No, that's very well done.
Yeah, they did a good job. And I think they had a couple things. They had a specific audience in mind they want to target, right? Former military. And it was really a recruiting video, not only about the agency, but just the geography, the location, living in Los Angeles. Because that's always a really strong selling point. It's a thing that, law enforcement agencies in other areas, it's going to be more challenging, right?
Right.
For instance, you're in the Midwest. And so one of the things I don't know if we talked about it earlier, we might have mentioned it. So when you're thinking about doing a recruiting video, right? What time of year should you shoot this, right? So if you're in the Midwest, winter's typically not a very pretty time to go out and shoot things. So you want to make sure you're shooting in late spring, summer, fall. Those are the type when you really want to get to show off your city, because that's one of, like you said, one of the selling points of the agency is where you're located. So keep in mind when you're deciding, hey, I think we should do this. Let's do a recruiting video. Don't start your process in October or November, right? Because once you hire somebody, it's going to take some meetings, discussion, and you get some planning. You want to make sure that you've got a time frame where you can do this video, and you're going to show your city at its best when it looks really nice. So keep that in mind too, because I think the interesting thing, we ran into that in 2013 is we started that process in early November. And so the shots of the city, and we did get some nice days. I think it was late October, early November. We did get a couple of nice days to go to shoot, but then, we just ran into some really nasty weather. And so some of the shots were like, it's shots of the city of an overcast, November sky. But in the 2019 video, we shot it in July, which was perfect. Because the town looked green, it looked pretty. And so that's something to keep in mind when you start this process. Because obviously you're not going to have the reason. I mean, if you're in Los Angeles, you can shoot whenever, right? If you're in Florida, you can shoot whenever. But if you're in an area like Cleveland, or Indiana,
according to New Orleans, right?
Exactly, you're going to be limited. You just think about that, because again, you're trying to sell an image. It's all about selling the town, the agency, and you want to put your best foot forward when you're presenting that to a potential recruit, especially if you're recruiting people that are, maybe don't know the area, right? If you're trying to reach out to people across the country, which you're going to have to, right, in order to get people interested. And then it's important also with geography is a thing, I don't know if we talked about, is like, what makes your agency unique, right? What sets you apart? Because there's all these towns, cities, in the Midwest, everywhere have police enforcement agencies, so law enforcement agencies. So what makes it unique? And that's where you start to build your story, is you tell that story. This is why we're unique. This is why you want to work here. And this is why you want to come here and work as an officer.
Yeah, because that impression, like we said, is important. Because you can do harm with the wrong type of video if you, number one, alienate your community and you create something that's maybe not reflective or doesn't put your best foot forward, or at least what your community is expecting. And then if you create false expectations for potential recruits, they get fired up for a video and you might attract the wrong type of candidate, the person you're not looking for. And then when a candidate does get there, they may be like, man, it's not all sunshine and rainbows like I saw in the video.
Yeah.
And if you have successfully pulled somebody from across the country to come to your place as a filmmaker, then
well, you've done your job. You just have to.
Yeah.
You just want to get him interested, and then when you bring him in, he's like, "Well, I just want to let you know, it does get cold here in the winter, and it doesn't always which they have an understanding of that." But
right. But in the end, talent is the most important thing. That's what we're trying to attract, and we're trying to attract people with the right characteristics. So, and I think LAPD did a good job in that video. In that, compassion, empathy, hard work, effort, community. They do a really good job, and clearly somebody that it's, and nothing. I've seen some officers that have developed these types of skills inside of agencies that have produced some fantastic work. There's a group out of Indianapolis that travels around, and they do for officer down memorials. They do production work of officer funerals, and it's kind of it's sad that they have to do it, but they produce some videos that are just like, wow, what a powerful thing to be able to share with a family member and somebody that, what a great memory of service and sacrifice. So there's so many things that can be done. And we're talking today, we're focusing mostly on these recruiting videos. But remind me before we leave, because one of the most videos watched from our agency, one that you helped produce also was a community service informational video that we did after a police use of force. And so having that done in a professional way was really beneficial, again, because it allowed us in a longer format to be able to put together a complete picture of a use of force incident, provide some context, provide some the narrative in terms of, here's what the body cam footage shows, here's what the officer heard on his radio, here's what the 911 traffic was, and here's where we are in the process. And that was beneficial as well. So for somebody, and it's kind of interesting. This is it's like a burgeoning career field inside of the profession. Like you mentioned it, we had an intern that was working with us from Purdue. She was really good with the social media stuff. She was fantastic. We tried to hire her, but she went off to California.
California dreaming, right?
I know.
She must have saw that video.
It was all about, I think it was about a boy. Someone that she met in grad school. But nice Air Force young man. So anyway, I digress. All right, let's show another one. And this one it's a little bit different. And this was again one of the top 10 videos.
To build and maintain a community of the highest quality.
Let's go back and start that at the beginning.
Home to the Abilene Police Department since 1883.
So we're showing, just like you said, kind of geography, right? We're getting a little bit of a feel for Texas. And this is a creative use of drone technology, and I've seen some of these commercials being made, but kind of like one of those single shots, a fly through of the agency. So
I want to be like her.
Again, if you're not watching on YouTube, take a minute when you do get stopped. You can do this top 10 video search through Police One, or you can go straight to YouTube and Abilene, Texas Police recruiting video.
So they had a cut right there, you could tell, but that was cool for how they do it. They flew into a dark. Oh, this is great, yeah. That's a cool headquarters.
It is. I actually had the thought when I was watching this, it almost looks like they took over an unused strip mall and built a police department in it, just completely renovated, which is a great idea. Especially if it's in the right spot. Location is important.
Well, here's the thing. Another really important thing about this is they're showing off the facility. Again, what's unique about Abilene is they've got this incredible headquarters. I mean, you're looking at it, I was like, man, I'd love to work there. Look at all the stuff that they have. They have this incredible gym, really cool lobby, these cool offices. It's a lot of really interesting space. And so I think when the filmmaker, when they decided, okay, how are we going to do this, is like, well, you've got this incredible, unique headquarters. Let's show it, right? And the way they're doing it smartly is through this kind of drone, shot where we're going through all the different areas and showing off. I mean, it's got all these windows. It's a really pretty headquarters. And obviously, not every law enforcement agency is going to have something like this. But like I said, what they did was they decided, the filmmaker or the police unit as well, they said, what's really unique about this agency? It's like, what's really unique is like, we've got this incredible facility. I mean, let's show it off. And that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, and it's a very clever way where they integrated the different units inside the police department. So they're showing the headquarters, but they're telling a story as they do it. Very
all the different things. Yeah, all the different, not a hard sell, all the different things that they do.
And there's a nice tempo that's building. It starts off nice and soft and quiet. Now the tempo starts building. We go into that 911 center. We hear a police call coming in. We show investigation saying, hey, we're flipping this investigation. Great job. We're turning it over to SWAT. And now we're seeing everything gear up. and we're moving towards an outcome. That shot should look familiar to you.
Watch the command. Teams up. Let's
Yeah.
go.
I'm gonna go in. Yeah.
Some more cool music.
So in order to pull something off like that, that was a lot of planning, a lot of coordination, the timing. That was not easy. I mean, that was, of course you get it done in a couple, because they had a couple of hidden cuts. You'd get it done in a couple shots, you're done. But the actual planning and setting that up, I imagine, took a lot of time. And so you have to have full commitment from your entire department in order to do that. That's another thing to think about when you do these videos, is that not only, I mean, you're going to have multiple people involved. You want to show off the department. So you want to make sure you get as many people involved as possible. You want to make sure you get a diverse range of people, young officers, older officers, male, female, a broad spectrum of diversity, because that's something you want to, if you have that, obviously you want to show that off. But you have to, if you're going to do this, I think another thing as a law enforcement agency is like, you got to be committed to do it, right? You just can't okay, we'll just have somebody come in and shoot something, and there's going to have to be a lot of cooperation in order to pull something off that's effective and interesting to watch.
So in the first video that we did back in 2013, you really built, I thought, a clever script that kind of weave that same kind of story in, but it was really about who we're looking for.
Yeah.
The investigation was, okay, here's the type of person that we're looking for. And it was successful. We got a lot of, we did see a bump in the number of applications that we got. We did survey the officers that were applying. We had several that said, yeah, it wasn't necessarily the video that sold them, but the video is what brought their attention to the agency and the organization.
And that's primarily what you want to do. I mean, you're not going to sell somebody, I'm going to sign my name on the dotted line based on the video. You're just trying to create interest, awareness, so they'll take the next step, right? So that's, and it goes to, again, don't bog down your video with a bunch of details, all the benefits package, you can include snippets of it, but just be careful. You just want to get them interested. You just want to whet their appetite to make sure that recruit follows up and goes to the website and starts the process of looking into applying.
So we learned a few things from that first one, and one of which was be careful about what time of year that you actually start this process.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show your video now from 2019. This is the second one that we did at Lafayette PD. And this is up on, for those that are, we'll put this stuff in the show notes, and we're going to find a copy of the original one and throw that in there as well. But we'll get this one started, and let's talk our way through this one as well. Want to leave impressions on this world long after you're done, then there's no better place to do that in policing.
I start every day kind of knowing that I'm going to have a big impact on my community.
We all have that common goal of trying to make a difference, trying to make this the best community that we can.
This is the place where real police officers come to work and make a difference every day.
So this is where you're
Police
kind of
Department
threading
has
in
148 sworn officers.
the personalities of the officers. We're showing geography,
specialty units.
Putting a little action in there, keeping it entertaining at the same time.
The opportunities here at the police department are vast.
We have a wide variety of things from K9,
Show what the different specialties
SWAT.
are. Show what people
street crimes unit.
can do, what
like
kind
to
of
be a bike
opportunities
patrol
they're going to
officer,
have inside the
people like
organization.
They could be a crime scene tech. They could be a traffic officer.
Pretty much anything you would like to do with your career, you are able to do it here at LPD.
We receive numerous training hours.
From the time you start getting hired to the time that, 29 years, I'm still learning.
Part of the reason I came to Lafayette Police Department was because of
And this is a good example of
technology.
We're the
showing
leader
like some
in
of the things that we
when it
were
comes
doing
to
from a
police work.
technology
We're always looking
perspective,
for that next frontier.
looking for people
What
that might
can
be
we do to be
interested in
better?
that type of work
We are
inside of
always
policing.
constantly improving
Analysts,
ourselves to be the best officers we can be at every level.
detectives.
Fitness is incredibly important to our occupation.
We have this amazing CrossFit facility right here in our training center. It's open 24 hours.
And it's really been a game changer for our officers.
Lafayette's unique in the way that we're not a big city, but we're also not a small town either.
You don't realize until after you live in other locations how much the city has to offer.
It falls right in between Indianapolis and Chicago.
And one of the unique things about us here in Lafayette is we have Purdue University right across the river.
What I think makes LPD such a great place to work is the people.
These are people that I consider family and friends, not just coworkers.
They're there for when you get married. They're there for when your kids are born.
All around, I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with.
This job is so very important, and we need the best people we can find.
We offer great compensation. There's a take-home car program, the ability to join a specialty unit if you're interested in that.
It's just a great agency to work for.
There's a lot of really great men and women that work here.
For the people that want to stay busy, that want to use that new technology, that want to make a difference, this is the place. Where do I sign up?
I know. I got wrapped up into it, and I made it. I was like, I'm just kidding. I thought, overall that it came together really well. I mean, all the different things that we're able to accomplish, and the interviews. I mean, I think the heart of it is, and that's the important thing, is a lot of times when you go into this, you got to identify the people that can talk, who can give you those good sound bites and nuggets that you can build a story from. So if you're an agency that's like, because when we encountered, and I can talk about the West Lafayette one a little bit, they had done something they were not happy with, and it was no fault of the person they hired. It was someone who was young and inexperienced, but the problem they had was that in the interview process of interviewing the officers, they didn't get the information out, because I think there might have been some intimidation factor, and they just didn't get a lot of good sound bites to build a story. And so I think that's an art in itself, and is the filmmaker, because again, that's a different approach. Like we saw Abilene, we saw LAPD, where you didn't do interviews. You're just doing visuals. You're doing this kind of really cool visual, either a montage or the single drone. But if you do it the approach I did, where you're going to sit down and interview these people and get sound bites and build a narrative from that, you have to make sure that you get people that can talk, and the person doing the work can do a good interview to pull that out of the officers, because not a lot of officers are as talkative as Pat. So
it's a wonder how he wound up in a podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you got to make sure that you have people in your agency that one, they're willing to sit down and talk to you, and two, they have something interesting to say. But a lot of those responses will just become from you're just talking to the officer about why they like working here, and then after we interviewed, I think for that we did a lot of interviews. I think we ended up doing 14 to 15, which might have been probably too many, but the intern is very ambitious in scheduling the interviews. So I had probably 2 to 3 hours of just interviews to go through to pull out the different, and sometimes you have to do that just to pull out those, what I call, those nuggets that really, really shine and tell the story of the agency.
Yeah. Well, so in a minute, I do want to show the West Lafayette video as well. Before I get to that, though, I think there was some, for people that are listening to this, that, maybe you're a chief or you're an admin or somebody that is thinking about, hey, should we do one of these videos? This is it's always better to learn from the mistakes of others and try to improve before you even get started. So making sure that you do your homework. So I think you've been dropping some really good nuggets here. As speaking of nuggets, one of the things that I thought, maybe here's the question, right? When compared to where you were back in 2013, like pre-Ferguson, because what we saw, right? We alluded to this earlier. The number of applications are going down, the rise of the military cop. You see all these really intense recruiting videos that are highlighting only really one small portion of policing. Like a SWAT response in a police department is less than 1% of what an agency is doing. So if you make the video 90% about a very small portion, then you're probably not doing yourself any favors. It's still fun to show that stuff and put it in there. But again, weaving it into the story, because in the aftermath of Ferguson, that was the big push in the country, was like the rise of the militarization of the police. This, we're at war with our communities, and we weren't doing ourselves any favors by some of the videos that we were pushing out there. We were basically kind of saying, yeah, you're right, this is what we're doing.
And it's important, when you talk, because here's the issue, right? Showing a SWAT response is very visually interesting from a filmmaking standpoint. It's interesting to watch. There's a lot of elements going on, and it's very cinematic. It can be, right? If you shoot it. And so it's a really cool thing to show, right? But you have to balance that with, okay, is this the message? I mean, show a little bit, but you don't want to dominate your video with it. But also when you think about it, well, what is 80% of police work? It's you're sitting down at a desk, on a computer, and that's not something particularly visual that's going to sell the agency. I mean, that's not the sexy part of being a police officer. So you have to figure out a balance. I mean, what is your balance? What do you want to show? And I think that leads us into West Lafayette, because they saw the Lafayette one, they really liked it, but it's like, well, we want a different approach. They really wanted to stress community, and which is not that we didn't talk about that in the Lafayette police video, but they didn't, because if you look at the Lafayette one, it's engaging, right? It pulls you in. It's got this very aggressive, not aggressive, but it's got this beat music where you're locked in. You're hearing all these great things. You're seeing all this cool stuff, but that was the one thing when I first met with the chief. He was like, I think we want a different pace. We don't necessarily want that kind of fast, and we want to show off the stuff that we do. But I think when I met with them, is like, the message I got for them is like, we really want to stress the community support that we have, because that's the thing a lot of agencies struggle with. That's what makes West Lafayette, not to say Lafayette they also have community support, but just this particular video for West Lafayette, they wanted to stress the community has their back. You come here, you're not going to have to put up with the headaches of constantly being, yelled at, or bad press clippings or stuff in the media. You're going to feel the support of the community because you're part of the community. Yeah.
Well, I think that's also, so that's the other thing, right? And that's, some of these different videos, you see different personalities, different characteristics, and there are 18,000 police departments in the United States. Some very, very big, like your NYPDs, your LAPDs, Chicago, Houston, some gigantic agencies. But then most police departments are very small, 20 officers or less, 50 officers or less. So, I think it was, smart to want to have a different character to the video, because two cities side by side,
I know,
very similar but also very different. At the core of the policing mission is the same for both, right? It's community service, community safety, but the environment in which you're policing is different. So it's good to find a way to tell your own story, and I thought it was very nicely done. So let's kick into that one. Watch this video, and then I think we're probably getting up there. So we'll think about wrapping it up afterwards. But the videos are kind of fun to watch, and
give my best.
What makes West Lafayette Police Department a great place to work is the people.
There's so many things within the department you can do.
There's a real emphasis and focus on just developing good, well-rounded officers.
West Lafayette's community is by far the best community to work for.
And we all work in the best communities.
We all, yeah. I mean, there's going to be some very consistent things, right, with every department.
I think one of the biggest reasons that I applied is the massive opportunity that you have in the police department.
We are an agency of 50 officers.
Because of the size, you have the opportunity to get into different specialties that you're actually passionate about.
I'm a canine officer. I'm an active shooter instructor.
Crisis intervention team member.
We have a motorcycle division. There's a detective division here in West Lafayette. There's always room somewhere for some type of advancement in the department.
Anything that you set your mind to, you have the ability to do here.
You can further your education. I went back and I got my master's degree. They want you to become a better person, a better officer.
I chose to apply at the West Lafayette Police Department is because I really like the area.
West Lafayette's located 2 hours south of Chicago and 1 hour north of Indianapolis.
To me, it's beautiful. You've got the small city aspect, but then you can go out into the country.
We have numerous walking trails, bike trails. It's just a great active community to raise a family in.
We have access to some of the finest education in the country. Your kids can go to top-rated public schools, and then Purdue University is situated inside of our city as well.
I think having Purdue in our backyard is a really big bonus.
The college atmosphere, I think, brings a little bit different spice and flair to the
So for the people that are listening,
it has a large international community.
There's some really good cinematography that's done, some great video shots. Again, going back, showing
different cultures.
What I enjoy the most
the geographic aspect of what you mentioned a few times in this.
Tests in our bar district,
and you know, quite frankly, you're able to highlight some of the unique things to a university town, right?
Being next to a college.
Not every city, you know, there may be 18,000 police departments, but there's only so many that are in the Big Ten or in, you know, any Power 5 type of school. So basketball environments, football football Saturdays
across America.
Yeah, so this was an interesting. So they contacted me to do this video.
Work together
in early October, and I was like,
community events.
We got to get started
about the community
right now.
Citizens here.
So I shot a ton of B-roll in that first month just to get it in before you know the weather changed, and then the weather did change on us, and we kind of put a pause in the video. So we actually shot a lot of the stuff.
The commanders
in
people are awesome.
In October, and then we ended up doing the interviews in February. And then I had to shoot a couple more things.
I work with some
and we shot that in early March once the snow melted.
We do genuinely take care of each other and check in with each other.
That was one of the difficult things about the video, but it all came together pretty well.
Great knowing that the people you work with are your family. So I think it's the people.
And this one's a little longer than to be honest. I try and shoot for between anywhere from 3 minutes seems to be like a really nice
and that is huge
place to do a video. This one's a little longer, but like when I was talking with them, they were like, we're fine with it being, you know, we want to make sure we cover everything. And so I was like, okay. So I had a version I felt pretty happy with as far as like all the different elements, and it was a little longer, but it still I think holds people's attention, because that's another thing you have to think about. It's like, you know, you don't want to do a 20-minute video. No one, you know, people are gonna, you know, as soon as they see 20 minutes, I'm not watching. You know, you want to keep it short and you want to keep it on point.
So that was something that we also learned in that original video that we did back in 2013.
I think that was a little longer, yeah.
The first one was 7 minutes, and and we needed 7 minutes to kind of set up the investigation and kind of set the theme. The problem was that there wasn't, you know, people weren't watching the whole thing. So then we did create a shorter version of that video. And
and we also did the same. We did the same thing with LPDs. We ended up doing. We had, I think, what was the 3 minute, and then I did a minute version, and I did a 30-second version. I think that actually aired on local television, like because you guys got free commercial time from the local news station. But yeah, so there's also that thing you need to think about. You know, repurposing the video, different versions. You know. So like if you're, for instance, I don't know, let's see, this is my ignorance. You guys set up I'm certain you guys set up at different places, maybe universities or where you're, advertising your agency. And so if you're in that setting and if you have a monitor or a screen, you don't want a 5-minute video. You want something 30 seconds, right? So something,
Right.
So when you go into this process, think about when you're talking to whoever you hire, is like, well, we want a 3 to 4 minute version that we can put on YouTube, but we're also thinking we want something 30, 60 that not only we can share on social media, because Twitter's one where there's a limit on the length you can put up. But like if you're just in some kind of environment where like a trade show or recruiting thing that you could just throw up on a screen and people, as they're walking past, won't have to sit there for 10 minutes to watch.
So that's a lot, and we've covered a lot of ground, and we've looked at a few videos, and just in an hour we've only looked at like 4 or 5 videos, and there are whereas in 2013 they were kind of hard to find. Like there were some agencies that had done them, but now it seems every police department has a recruiting video, and that's kind of that race to what needs to be done.
Yeah, and one of I think we might have talked about the one that I remember distinctly is like you showed was from New Zealand, because
Yes.
I mean there wasn't a lot of video. I mean there was a couple, and to be honest, there wasn't a lot that were well done at that time. We were kind of in the early stages of recruiting videos, but I remember the one that you showed me but that was for the national.
That New Zealand one was actually in between the first one we did and the second one we did.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I was at the IACP convention, there was a training block built on recruiting videos.
Okay.
And which was again some of the motivation to have this show, because they brought in some video production folks, and the folks from New Zealand actually taught a class about what they did and how they made that recruiting video. So again, another one that's I think pretty cool. If you've never seen it, folks, jump on. I'm trying
It
to
definitely
make some
has
notes
a more comedic tone to it, so it's entertaining. So and again, like we said, comedy, high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Like if you do something comedic, just be careful, because that could turn off a lot of people. Because not everybody has the same sense of humor.
Now,
So
all right,
just keep that in mind.
With that being said, we're going to have to do one more, because this one I think was one. Speaking of humor and comedy, it might have been one of the more popular ones from last year or the year before. Yeah, it's and you probably have not seen this, so we're going to get a raw interpretation.
Okay. Lay it on me
as we go.
Howdy, folks. Officer Big B here. Are you looking for a new job? Are you ready to try something new that'll make a difference at doing something really great? Well, come to us here at the Fort Worth Police Department. We're hiring and we got it all. We got your patrol vehicles, we got your Explorers, we got your Tahoes, and we even got your F-150 responders. Say what? Now, currently, you may not have squad, but come join us here at the Fort Worth Police Department, because we've got SWAT. Yes, sir. We've got your armored vehicles. We've got your Bearcats. While these big machines here takes a licking, keeps on ticking. That's right, folks. You may be asking
Fort Worth,
yourself, but Big B,
Texas, for people that are listening. I know this made the circuit in the police world last year. It's pretty.
Step right over here.
It's very
folks.
clever.
That's great. Oh, very funny. Yeah.
We have got our quarter horses, and even if you're lucky, maybe even a thoroughbred. That's right, folks. You're not going to find more horsepower than what we got here for you right here in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, you may be asking yourself, I'm an officer, Big B, that would rather hopper on a chopper. Well, folks, you're in luck. We've got your motor unit right here. We've got your roadway. Oh, yes, sir, we do. We've got your dual sport for the off-road. For you eco-friendly folks out there, we got these bicycles. The only footprint you're going to leave is on the pedal. Now, folks, you may be asking yourself, do I have to be brand new to join our Fort Worth Police Department? No! Right here, we take trade-ins. Folks, we've got an amazing lateral program right here for all of you officers that are out there saying, you know what? I'd like to make a change for a little more ka-chang. That's right, folks. Come visit us here if your credit's good where you're at right now, because we'd like to give you a chance to do that happy dance. Now, folks, I could go on and on, about the amazing things that we got right here for you at the Fort Worth Police Department. But don't take my word for it. Give us a call. Send us an email. It doesn't matter if it's AM or PM. Just send us that DM. And I'll tell you what, you talk to that recruiter and you tell them Officer Big B sent me here. And you come join us right here at the Fort Worth Police Department in Fort Worth, Texas. That's the Fort Worth Police Department in Fort Worth, Texas. Did you hear what I said? The Fort Worth Police Department in Fort Worth, Texas.
Guy on the right's supposed to be the
call now.
One of those blow up.
Yeah.
392-5599.
I don't even got the little.
Was that recruiting? You can send us.
That's clever. That's very clever.
You can
And that takes a police chief that's willing to let's try it.
Yeah,
because I can imagine you come in and a couple things. So I hope if that guy's an officer, he's awesome, or
he is.
Maybe
yeah.
he was. He's fantastic. So if you have someone like that, absolutely, because he did a fabulous job. Because you would need someone with that type of dramatic range to pull that off. Because he was great. So you got to have someone like that, and I think you want to use an officer. You wouldn't want to hire an actor for that. That's fantastic that he's actually an officer. And then it held my interest. Funny, it's funny, and the question is, was it gonna? I think it's gonna attract eyeballs. We'll see how well they get people like again, it's going to cut through a lot of the noise out there because it's much different than what you normally see. So I think it'll get interest. But will people, email or call? They had the flashing number, so hopefully they call.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, that little production effects that they did were.
Here's the thing now, that's been done. So another thing that people will come up is like, well, we want to do something like that. I was like, we don't want to copy.
Right.
I mean, they did it. So you have to move on from that. So if you want something in that tone, then you have to like brainstorm and then think about something that, you can kind of frame your message in a really unconventional way, like in a car commercial, used car commercial, or, some like home shopping network thing, or, I mean, there's a lot of different things. I think the one
injury attorney, that'll be the next
injury
one.
attorney.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could do to try and frame your video in an unconventional way. But that was good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. And that brings up another pretty good point, because there were a few years ago, especially during COVID, right? I think we saw this in a lot of different, a lot of different ways. People with the best of intentions, some of these lip syncing videos and then the dancing videos, in the police world, it was, who was the late night guy that was doing the sing-alongs in the car, and then, some police officers.
The karaoke thing.
Yeah.
Carpool karaoke, James Corden.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then there was police officers that started doing it on TikTok, and then, in their social media channels, and it kind of gained a little bit of momentum. And then there was these whole videos being produced. And so speaking of pushback, there was some pushback from communities that were kind of like, all right, how much time, money, and effort are police departments spending to produce these kind of like fun, lighthearted videos when, I can't get someone to show up at my 911 call. So there is, there's always, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying you have to strike a balance, and you have, timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
And so if you copy, sometimes you're probably behind the power curve already if you're mimicking or doing something that someone else has already done. So that's a great point. Be careful about what you do. And when you do it.
Well, and just because you see something and you try and emulate that, you need that guy. That was, I mean, the thing is, you need someone to pull off that performance, because if you don't, because I thought that guy's an actor, or he's got some kind of background in theater, because he was great. And
I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he was. I remember reading that he was an officer.
Yeah. So, think about those things when you're trying to think about, okay, we want something like that where you have scripted scenes or something where you're going to need a performance, recognize the limitations of your own officers as far as it comes to being an actor. right? I mean, there would be some that are. I think in the 2013 video, we had a few people that had really surprised me in how well they did as far as reading lines and performing lines, because we did have scripted lines in that one. Who was the guy? I can't remember. He was the one that was giving the briefing.
Oh, that was Chris Weaver. It was Lieutenant Chris Weaver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He did a
in
good
roll
job.
call.
Yeah, he did a good job, and then he was at the end as well. Yeah, he did a good job.
Okay, so we've been going for a while, so let's wrap it up. Let's just a couple of closing thoughts and maybe a recap for an agency. All right, hey, I'm looking to do a police recruiting video, or even just some type of informational video to show the community what we do on a daily basis. What are again, just maybe some a quick summary of what people should think about. And this isn't a sell for Jason Doty. This is really a sell for hiring a professional to do this work, because there is a danger in getting the wrong people trying to do the work.
Because that first point is very important, because video equipment, software, it's ubiquitous now. Anybody has access to it, right? If the tools aren't expensive. There used to be a barrier, 15, 20 years ago, where you had to hire a professional to do a video because you just didn't have the equipment. But now everybody has the equipment. So you got to be careful in who you hire and the expectations of what you're trying to do. I mean, it all comes down to budget. What can you afford? I know, when I was talking to WLPD West Lafayette, they were investigating different people, and there was a group out of, I think, Arizona that they specialize in this, but the quote was way outside of their budget. I mean, they were more in line with like a big city, type budget. So you got to figure out how much money are you going to spend. And to be honest, I mean, there's going to be a certain level you're going to have to invest. I mean, if you're thinking about doing it and doing it right? And hopefully if you do this video, it's one you can repurpose and reuse for several years. So you have to think about it in those terms. So you need to figure out, okay, we're going to have this video, we're going to use it for 3 or 4 years, or until the chief retires, and then we got to do a new one. But you got to think about, this is an investment in the future of our agency. So if you think about those terms, just saying, we're going to do a silly video, we'll just hire whoever, and then roll with it, because you're going to get, varying quality. So that's really important. So vet whoever you're going to hire, figure out what kind of budget you're looking at, and see if you can get anybody to work within that budget. And then, I mean, really, it just comes down to, coordination and cooperation with whoever you hire, and then having a discussion of like, what is it that you want to sell in this video? What makes your agency unique? What are some of the things you want to highlight? What is the approach that you're willing? Are you willing to allow the filmmaker to be creative? And like, how about we do, send up of a used car commercial like we just saw? Yeah. Or how about, I know a guy who's an excellent drone pilot that has one of these small drones we can fly around and do something cool like that. Now, obviously, like we just said, you don't want to do imitations of stuff that's already out there, because you do want to create your own original video that will cut through that noise that's out there, right? Because there's a lot of this stuff out there. And then once you have that discussion, then you just, you have to be committed on your end, because the filmmaker is not going to be able to, coordinate everything, because they're gonna ask for a lot, and they're going to need help. So if you can appoint someone within your organization, I know a lot of smaller agencies don't have this, but you need to have someone as a point person who can kind of corral the other officers. If you want to set something up, if you want to set up a chase scene, a SWAT, or you want to get some footage of whatever. And then also, it's really important to figure out calendar wise when you're going to do this, and what are some B-roll, so B-roll footage, like when can you go out and get footage of just like community events that fits within the calendar, because there are certain periods of the year where the police is going to be involved in the community. You want to show that. So there's a lot of things to think about. But I think, the first thing is try and identify somebody that can help you, guide you through this process, and then I mean, if you're in Hollywood, you're in New York, obviously you're going to have a lot of resources that are there, a ton of different people you can hire. If you're in a smaller city, you know, like Lafayette or West Lafayette, you're going to be limited to who you'll be able to find. But there typically are some talented people out there. You just have to look, and I never hire anybody based if they can't show you what they've done, like an example of their work. Don't you want to be sure that you're investing in somebody that like, oh, okay, they've done this before, or they've done something similar, or they have the chops to pull this off. So,
well, I would say just to chime in there, the part that you touched on is make sure that you have the right communication with the executive staff of the police department, and the executive staff needs to also make sure that whatever message you're telling is one that your mayor, your city manager, your city council, that they're all going to be supportive of as well. Because you don't want to spend a lot of time, effort, and resources on a project only to have it get torpedoed on you afterwards. So it's better to get all that stuff done up front. Sometimes you get a lot of, there is such a thing as too much feedback, too much input, because then you feel like I'm not even the creative here, right? Like, but
well, you're going to round out the edges and make it very very homogenized and uninteresting, because what makes something compelling is usually something that is going to be, like I said, high risk, high reward. Not everything's high risk, but anytime you do some kind of creative endeavor, right? Everybody has an opinion about something, and the more opinions you throw out something, the more, like I said, homogenized and just kind of vanilla it becomes, because you're trying to please a bunch of different people. So make sure, that's another important thing. Make sure that you got like maybe a committee within, or even a single person that's going to have the final sign off. And then obviously you want input from your officers. And if there's anything that's like, oh, I don't really want to show that, or I think that's the wrong, I don't want to, let's cut that out. We're not quite sure, because the filmmaker and whoever you hire may not have all the information. There might be something that you're trying to avoid that happened 3 years ago, and you don't want to show that or something.
Right.
So, yeah. But I think it's something that it's like I said, I think obviously with the environment that you're in, that a compelling recruiting video can go a long way in helping you stand out from the pack and be able to tell your story, because you're controlling it, right? This is the time where you control your story. And so you can tell whatever type of story you want, and then hopefully you get people to respond and sign up, or at least investigate the possibility of joining the force.
Yeah, it's funny because my wife and I were just having this conversation the other night. It's seen, despite the fact that policing in America sometimes has been less than popular, what has never ceased is the production of new police shows coming out of Hollywood and on television.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of the things you said, right? It's just a compelling, interesting, human dynamic that it's just hard to replicate in other areas.
Yeah. And I think as an occupation, it's not every situation. It's limited, but there's high stakes a lot of times in some of these situations. Not always life and death, but and that's what makes it compelling drama for television. Right. Is that there's the high stakes aspect of the profession. But yeah, they're always, so I think that in itself, because I think a lot of people grow up, not a lot of people, but people that become officers, they're probably influenced by those police shows, right? Some of those,
they
like
absolutely are. Absolutely.
They see that, and I was like, oh, I could do that. I was the same way growing up. I'd go see a movie, and I'm like, man, I'd love to be. And and what happened to me was like, I keep going seeing a movie, and I realized maybe it's the movies that I want to make. It's because I'd be so influenced and so impacted by the movies. I was just like, oh man, maybe I just want to do that and make the movies. But yeah.
All right. So normally I ask people, and I know you're a big reader, you love to read, and I normally ask, all right, what book are you currently reading? So there's going to be a twist. So I am going to ask you though, what's the latest book you've read, and fiction or nonfiction?
Okay, so the latest book that I've read is I bought this book for my daughter for Christmas, but I kept it and started reading it. The name right now escapes me. I'm sorry, but it's The History of Surgery. It traces back. It's fascinating. I'll try and find out what the name of it is. I don't remember the name.
I'm looking right now because we can't. Anytime you buy a present and keep it for yourself, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, but it traces the history of surgery, and it's fascinating how
Empire of the Scalpel.
That's it, Empire of the Scalpel.
All right.
It's fantastic. And just to give you a thing, there's four things. I think if I remember right, there's four things that make modern surgery possible. Four things that that had to come about to make modern surgery possible as we see it today. So can you name any of those four things?
I would have to, it has to be the scalpel, right? Since that's the name of the book, Empire of the Scalpel. Like,
no, not
so
the tools,
is it like
but I mean,
okay,
four things that make modern surgery. So we've always had like sharp instruments, but what makes modern surgery possible? Four things.
Well, a sterile environment.
Yeah, that's one. That was problematic, and that didn't happen until the late 1800s because people didn't believe in germs and they didn't understand it. So that was one. That was actually
high-end video, like magnification.
Well, technology, but that's not one of the primary ones. That's been helpful. So think about if you go all the way back, and so if you're talking the Renaissance,
like a study of anatomy, you have to
exactly.
Understand. Okay.
So before like the Renaissance, you could not dissect a corpse. It was against the law. You could not. So people didn't know. So how they found out was like they would take animals. So that no one had a really knowledge of how the human anatomy worked until like the 1400s. And then, of course, the printing press allowed them to disseminate that information. That's one. Then the second one is being able to control bleeding, because they had no idea of how to control bleeding. And so that came about in, I don't want to, 1700s. No, later than that, probably. It's been a while since I've read that chapter. So you have anatomy, bleeding, a sterile environment, and then I think the most important thing to make it possible.
The surgeon themselves, like
anesthesia.
Oh yeah.
Because before we had anesthesia, they would literally do surgery and you would be conscious. So imagine cutting into somebody. They did surgeries. It was and the interesting thing, and just one more thing we're getting way off the topic, but the interesting thing about surgeons is that they were, before surgery became like a practice where it was taught in schools, they were called barber surgeons. People that were barbers were the surgeons in the communities. And so that pole, the red and white pole, where that comes from with barbers, that's from bloody rags. So they kind of took that red and white. It was bloody, it was red, and so it was bloody rags that you would see around a barber. And so that's what that red and white pole comes from with barbers. But they were barber surgeons. So the people that cut your hair. I mean, at that time they were like lancing stuff, chopping. They weren't actually going in internally and doing, because if you had to operate before you knew how to control bleeding, you had anesthesia. That was like the last resort, and most people died, right? But It is a fascinating book because he kind of tracks the whole history and the big moments that happen along the ways it makes modern surgery possible. The guy that wrote it is a surgeon as well, and so he has a lot of knowledge, and he tells stories of his own residency.
Oh, nothing better than like ER stories from
surgeons. So that's the one that I read most recent, and then the Stephen King book, and I always read Stephen King and reading the biography on Paul Newman. But yeah.
All right. So since you're a filmmaker, we got to go right to the movies now. What's the greatest movie of all time?
Oh man. So the thing is like
we got to go by genre. You're not going to
no.
let me just.
Well, I will just give you a kind of my top 5. Definitely not in any particular order, but like so in my top 5 is The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman, 1967. The Godfather, I combined 1 and 2 as one movie, so that gives me an extra movie if I go. So The Godfather 1 and 2. Jaws, The Verdict, Bridge of the River Kwai, and let me throw in Rear Window. So that's those movies are all in my top 10, top 6, whatever. And I got Star Wars back there, but Star Wars is, kind of a touchstone of my childhood more than anything. But it's a great movie, but I would be in my top probably 10 or 15. But the thing about movies and it's so subjective. Everybody has their own taste, and there's so much out there. And I used to be really judgmental and judge people on what their favorite movie when I was young. And I was like, "You like that piece of crap?" I was like, "I can't be your friend." But like, what you learn is like,
you Hollywood elitist. I tell you.
Exactly. I was a film snob. That's what when you go to film school, you become a film snob. But I've moved past, and I've grown, and you come to realize that everybody has their own specific tastes, and a lot of things affect why you like a particular movie. If you're, for instance, if you're a police officer, right, you might like a movie because it's reflective of what you do, what you know, what you've learned on the job. And maybe someone who doesn't have that knowledge may not have the appreciation, right, and may not see that in that particular movie. So there's a lot of things that form taste and opinion. But the one thing
you said, I'm sorry, I got to say it because you say, one of your top 5 movies was Jaws. And so I do recall your youngest son showing up at our house on Halloween just dressed up as Chief Brody.
Yeah, we got him the Chief Brody, had Amityville, like the patch. Nobody knew, like only 1 or 2 people knew what the heck he was, because they were like, this is a movie from 1975 for one. And it looked like he was just a police officer because he had the brown, kind of uniform that Roy Schneider wears in the movie, and he had the glasses. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sorry I interrupted you. All right, we better shut this thing down. We've been going for a while. How do if people need to learn more about how to make a good police recruiting video, how do they get a hold of you?
Okay. Well, I'm trying to take a break from doing, but if someone wants to email me,
you're not looking for work.
No, I'm willing. Yeah, I'm willing to have a discussion, talk about. Heck, this could become like a whole side profession, right?
Well, it could be, quite frankly, if people want to get it done right.
So if you indianafilmworks@gmail.com. So Indiana, then Filmworks, FILMWORKS@gmail.com. That's my company, and that's my email. If people want to reach out, if they have questions or want to have a discussion. And I'm based in West Lafayette, Indiana. So if you're looking to do a video and you've got the budget to fly me out there, wherever you're at, we can have that discussion. But just I could consult. I'm excellent at consulting. So that's the best thing, consulting. Have someone else do all the work, and I can throw in my 2 cents.
Well, if so, some people, and quite frankly, people that are coming from smaller agencies that just maybe they do have a couple people that have some technical skills. There are, not everyone can do the LAPD production. So there are definitely ways.
And there's some tips, and there's some tips that people ask me all the time on what should I use, what if we've got this, we've got that, work with what you have, and then I can offer some suggestions. I just don't want to be flooded with like, hey, we've got this, and what should we do? It's like, I don't know. But like, I'm not saying don't contact me if you're interested. I'm more than willing to have a discussion, and I know that the need is there, right?
Right.
To do this work and to reach out to potential recruiters.
All right, Jason Doty, thank you for being our guest on the Coptimizer podcast today. And that was fun.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. It was a pleasure.
All right, till next time, we're 1042.